Everyone needs a diversion. That's one of the reasons why we play this game. Whether from work, illness, family obligations, errands, or emergencies, or like today, all 5 at the same time. So we are not getting the magical merchant murmurs that I mentioned last week as my schedule got busy, so I have to present you with something I've already been working on. Today we are creating the sport of Hardball, Alphasia's favorite team sport, and the one thing that makes wizards and mundanes equal, if just for a few hours. And if anybody wants to grab 24 of their closest friends and play a game, send me the video, I'd love to see it. Welcome to Mystara. I'm Mr. Welch, and double-digit scores don't excite me. Hardball is played on a field measuring 50 yards wide and 100 yards long, with the field further divided into 10-yard squares. The squares are arranged in an alternating colored checkerboard, with a 1-yard white border between each square, taking up 1.5 feet of that 10 foot on all sides. With the center squares at the end of the pitch a different color from the two used for the other squares. This oddly placed square is where the goals are, a 10-foot high and 10-foot wide net centered inside of it. The object of the game is to get the softball-sized leather ball into the opposing net. Whoever has the most points at the end of a 90-minute match wins. Each match has 2 45-minute halves with a 20-minute halftime. The game is played with 11 men on the field, with 28 total on the team roster, and 2 reserves that can only come onto the field in case of injuries to the goalkeeper. Absolutely no magic is allowed in the match, unless used by the referees or organizers to supervise play for cheating or close calls. The game is so popular that teams are found in every province of the kingdom, and larger cities often sport multiple teams in developmental leagues. Equipment for Hardball consists of a team jersey consisting of a checkerboard pattern. The home team replaces one of its colors with white. No teams in a league can use the same 2 colors, and if they share a single color, the home team must replace the shared color with a white square. Every player has a leather glove similar to a baseball glove, with the goalkeeper possessing more like a catcher's mitt. A leather helmet is mandatory and must be worn at all times. Removing your helmet in play is a penalty. Removing a rival player's helmet in play is a match penalty. The squares comprising the field are the primary element of how the game plays. The ball cannot be carried across the squares, it must be thrown. The white line between the squares makes it easy for the referee to see if a player has stepped out of bounds with the ball, resulting in a penalty. Inside a square, the ball may be handed off between players without penalty, unless one is standing on a line at the time. Once control of the ball has been established in a square, no players can enter it unless they were in an adjacent neutral zone. This means their foot or another body part must be touching the white line to qualify as being in the neutral zone, even if the rest of their body was in another square at the time. Teams consist of one goalkeeper who can only enter squares adjacent to the goal. The goalie is allowed in the goal square at any time, while other players are restricted from entering. 4 defensive backs are tasked with preventing the opposing team from getting into a scoring position. Up to 2 backs are allowed in the goal square at any time, following all the rules for entering a square with a ball in possession. 2 wingers are the best receivers in the game and often the fastest players on their team. 3 strikers are the best all-around players, able to catch the ball while blocking rival players. The forward is considered the best passer on the team and is often tasked with getting the ball to open players and acting as the team captain on the field. Once the ball is in the hands of a player, the square is considered locked. No further players can enter it, though they can leave it without penalty. The player with the ball has 30 seconds to get it out of the square, otherwise a turnover is called. Time is kept by the officials, usually with a magical item designed for such purposes. Passing the ball inside the square does not reset the clock. The ball has to leave the square entirely. If the ball is turned over inside of a square, the clock resets, but all players inside the square are allowed to remain. If a ball is on the ground inside of a square, all players are free to enter it until the ball is secured by a player. If a player inside of a locked square touches a neutral line, they must leave that square or be called for a penalty. A player may touch a neutral line adjacent to a locked square as long as they don't touch it, but they cannot make contact with a player fully within a locked square while in the neutral zone. Defensively, players can tackle the ball carrier, wrestle the ball away, or intercept passes, but they must be making a play on the ball. Grabbing a player outside of a square where the ball is not in play is a penalty, as is tackling a player not in possession of the ball. Grabbing a ball carrier is allowed, but the player can only use both hands if one is touching the arm of the player in possession or in play for the ball. Tackling a player with both hands around the body is a penalty. Leveling someone with a body check without using your arms is completely allowed. The game wants fast-paced play, not a mosh pit in the middle of the field. If a carrier is tackled and releases the ball, the defensive player must get off them and not pin them while scrumming for the loose ball. The typical penalty for an offending player is to be sent off the pitch while the play resumes. This reduces the number of players on the field, resulting in a short-handed team until someone scores. When a penalty is called, the offending player is sent to the penalty bench. And if the player was on the team that had possession of the ball, a turnover is called. One player from the team now on the offense gains possession of the ball in the square where the ball was last held, and all other players must leave that square and adjacent squares, though diagonal squares are not considered adjacent. On a restart, no square may contain more than one player from each team. Then play resumes as normal. In the rare situation where one player on a team other than the goalkeeper is left, a technical penalty is called, and the other team is awarded a point. This is quite rare as it requires 9 penalties on a team without a point being scored. In case of a flagrant foul being called, a player is benched for the rest of the game, and their position is not filled by a replacement player. In the case of a goalkeeper who received a flagrant foul, their position is allowed to be filled, but another player must come off the field. If somehow all goalkeepers, including the reserve keepers, are ejected, the game ends in a forfeit for the offending team. This event has never happened, but the rule is there just in case. If the ball is thrown out of bounds, play is stopped for a player from the team that did not touch the ball last to pass the ball back into play. If a ball is caught by a player with a foot in the neutral zone, the zone that they first put both feet in is the new locked square. A player catching a ball in a neutral zone has 5 seconds to reach a square, or a turnover is called, with the other team getting the ball in a square adjacent to that neutral zone. If a player throws the ball out of bounds without a friendly player in any of the square the ball travels through, that is a delay of game and results in a penalty. When the ball completely crosses the goal line, a point is scored. The game is paused for 30 seconds while players on the penalty bench return to play and substitutions are made. The scoring team has to vacate all squares adjacent to the goal, and play resumes once the referee blows the whistle. Any opposing player entering a neutral zone adjacent to the goal square is declared offside. Any player on the goalkeeper's team who enters the square that isn't a defensive back, or if a third defensive back enters a square, they are declared offside and a penalty is called. A player in possession of the ball that steps into a neutral zone commits an illegal exit penalty. However, if they jump across a neutral zone into another square, the penalty isn't called if the ball is successfully passed to another player before the passer lands. This requires the ball to be caught. If the pass hits the ground, the penalty is called as normal. This is one of the more popular moves in the game, as fans love the all-or-nothing maneuver. This is often the result of a player about to be pushed out of a square, or if they are caught trying to draw an illegal contact penalty. Other penalties include unnecessary roughness, when a player hits a little too hard. Intentionally trying to cause injury will get you thrown out of the game. Knocking a player to the ground by hitting below the waist will get you a tripping penalty. A player leaving the field under their own power cannot return to the field, though that doesn't cause a stoppage of play, but re-entering the field is a penalty. If a player is shoved out of bounds by a rival player, they can return to play as long as they re-enter from the square from which they left the field. Re-entering in another square is a penalty. And holding or obstructing a player from legally returning to play is a penalty. A goalkeeper who willingly enters a square that is not adjacent to a goal square is considered offside, and unlike other penalties, is not replaced. In these situations, the team continues without a netminder. Pushing a goalkeeper into a square they are not allowed in is a penalty, but pushing them into a legal square where they have the ball is a stoppage, with the goalkeeper keeping control of the ball and rival players vacating adjacent squares. Substitutions can be done after any stoppage, but you cannot substitute for any player currently sitting on the penalty bench. Start of play at each half requires each player to be in a separate square on their own half, with the 2 goalkeepers in their goal square, with the 2 forwards at midfield. The referee throws the ball up in the neutral zone between the 2 forwards who jump for the ball. Once one has possession, the players are free to move around the field as normal. In case of a forward being ejected from play because of a match penalty, another player may take the jump ball. If a match ends in a draw, a 15-minute overtime period will ensue, with a tie declared if the score is still even. Typical play is fast-paced, with teams spreading out the field to allow for long passes, and possessing the ball in a square without rival players is a huge tactical advantage. If a pass is not caught, there is no penalty, but players may enter the square freely if the ball isn't in possession. Intentionally kicking a ball into another square is a penalty, but if the ball rolls into that square because of a scrum, this is considered a turnover on the team that touched the ball last. Standard practice in the game is to keep at least 2 players 2 squares away from the ball at all times to give them a quick target in case of rival players trying to wrestle the ball away. 2 players running in the same square is another common tactic, especially with a forward or a defensive man alongside a winger to act as a blocker. Teams that rely on speed can score within seconds, especially with long passes along a practice route. But this also requires some depth on your bench because this tactic will wear out your players rather quickly. Magic is entirely banned in all aspects of hardball, except for timekeeping and some officiating rulings. All players are subject to a dispel magic before each game and at the half, and detect magic spells are employed during the match to make sure both teams play fairly. In case of a spectator or neutral party casting a spell onto the pitch or against a team, Play will be suspended while the magic is removed and the offending spellcaster is expelled. A player that tries to use magic receives an immediate forfeit and will suffer sanctions by the ruling league. In short, don't try to cheat with magic. There are no restrictions on who can play Hardball, except they must be a medium-sized humanoid creature that does not fly during the game. This rule was implemented when one team tried to use a giant to score from across the field by sending the ball into the goal line like a cannonball. Creatures with magical abilities are allowed as long as they don't use their abilities in a match, and flying creatures must stay on the ground at all times. A she is welcome to play as long as they stay visible in the match. There are restrictions on when a player can be added to a team to avoid ringers. I've been working on these rules for a while. It's an interesting sport that needed to be fleshed out. Not sure how I would actually play, but that's for you and your players to debate, and maybe even work out a game. I will be trying to get the regularly scheduled video up next week when life is a little bit more sane. Until then, if winning isn't the only thing, why do we keep score?